Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
impact to the county. So the Agricultural Commissioner, their requested budget was just over $2 million, and then the recommended budget is about $1.7 million. This is below their maintenance of effort that they need from the state, so there will be impacts on them. We believe we have a strong case to make to the state that the cut that's to this department also will affect others, so we hope that that won't have a negative impact on us in the long term, but it is bringing us to a lower level of service than we have provided before. The reductions are met with staffing reductions. We're holding some positions open. We have delayed capital projects and delayed capital assets. Next up is the Bi-County Farm Advisor. So for this department, we essentially provide the staffing and the administrative support for an agency that is for Yuba County and Sutter County. And there's really no flexibility here in this department because we're basically just passing through staff costs and very limited administrative supplies and whatnot. So we weren't able to make any reductions for this department. The total costs over the last 5 years have gone up about 7.6%. For the library, you can see that this department has been very good at living within its means and growing at a predictable pace, essentially on pace with what our staffing have been, the cost of salaries. So it's about a 5% annual average increase year over year, and over the 5 years that is coming out to 27%. The reductions we had to make from the department requested budget to the recommended budget was just over $100,000. It does not seem like much perhaps, but it is a pretty big impact to the library. So because of this, we're taking staffing to a level that we really can't offer the full service we've been offering in the past for the library. We're gonna have to be closing the main branch in Yuba City on Mondays to allow staff to focus on the administrative tasks they need to do. So staff will be at the library, but will not be open to the public on Monday, given the decreased staffing we have. We've also decreased travel and training to the extent that our library director can't go to an annual conference that he would typically go to. And we have dramatically reduced the purchases of collection materials to a bare minimum level that we need. So this is not an ideal situation for the library, but again, this is a department that is doing its best to try to address the county's issues that we face this year with our budget. For the Sutter County Museum, its 5-year net county growth has actually been negative. And that is primarily reflected in this year's recommended budget being dramatically lower than it has been in previous years. We're down, we had a requested budget of $475,000, which was, as Steve mentioned, a very reasonable budget for this. We had dramatic cuts primarily related to unfunding the assistant curator position. So as of now, we will only have 1.5 full-time employees working at the museum. The rest we have extra help and we have volunteers who are very much appreciated. But that does create significant problems for running a professional museum such as what we have in Sutter County. This is not, volunteers are important to running our Sutter County Museum, but it is a professional museum that is run by the county. And with going down to 1.5 full-time staff, and that includes a position that's split with the library for getting grants, we have to have staff have time to engage in the activities that the grants require them to do. So because of that, we're going to have to be closing the museum. It's already closed on Monday, and it's also going to be closed now on Sunday and Tuesday as well. And that will allow flexibility to staff up so that we can keep the library, the museum open, but also to allow for those administrative tasks, those grant writing tasks to occur. And due to the low level of staff we have at the museum, we also wanted to make the public aware that there is the potential now that the I keep saying library, the museum may need to close periodically if staffing gets too low. We're going to try to avoid that if at all possible, but we wanted the public to be aware that really this is lower staffing than a museum of this caliber should have. And we don't want to be doing this, but this is what our budget unfortunately requires. Okay, I will now pass it off to Jamie.
Veteran Services Officer Budget Unit 5601's total appropriations are recommended at $230,493, the same as fiscal year 2023-24. The 5-year net growth is $115,772, roughly a 100% growth rate at about a 20% annual average. There are no net county cost reductions recommended, as this office is a bi-county initiative with Yuba County taking the lead. The net county costs after revenue deductions are shared equally between the two counties, contributing 50% each. The county's portion of the net county cost is specifically allocated within this budget unit. I'm happy to note that there are Yuba County staff in attendance. So this concludes the presentation for Section A. I'm going to hand it over to the board to open for public comment, board discussion, and consider conceptual approval for the budget units within Section A.
To the chair.
Yes,
I also have just a brief comment, if that would be okay.
please.
At times, and here I'm speaking specifically about the library, at times folks have mentioned, privatizing the library. We've looked at that several times over the years, and there are companies, for-profit companies, that will come in and run your library for you. However, we've gotten quotes in the past, and not only did it, once we looked through the quote, there were some issues there. They didn't understand. They couldn't use literacy grants for just going towards regular operations. And though they proposed increasing, I think the hours were maybe an hour or two a day, they would be able to open longer. There was no savings involved, and possibly negative if they tried to use grant funding inappropriately. So we've looked at that over the years. We value the library and our library staff, and I just wanted to put that out there that for the public, that so they know that we are looking at efficiencies, and we've gone there, and our staff are the most efficient way to run our library. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any public comment cards, speaker cards?
Yes, Chair, we have two public comments. The first one is from Phyllis Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Phyllis Smith. I live in Yuba City. I'm currently the president of the Sutter County Museum Association. I'm a native of Yuba City, and I have been involved with the Sutter County Museum since about the year 2000. The Sutter County Museum Association is a nonprofit organization, all volunteers, supporting the museum's efforts to provide quality exhibits, events, and programming. On behalf of the association, I would like to thank you for consistently supporting our museum. In this current economic climate, I appreciate that you are faced with difficult choices and understand the money is simply not available to fund every department's requests, even for items that we consider necessary. The loss of 40% of the museum's permanent staff is going to be a hardship, but we are intent on soldiering on. We want to do the best we can and hope for a better future. We will be having to cut some services, as you heard, but we intend to do the best we can with what we've got. When the financial situation improves, we ask that you please remember us and the valuable cultural services the museum provides to the citizens of Sutter County, as well as to others throughout the region, and fully fund the museum when you can. Also, I would like to invite you to attend our 50th anniversary celebration next April. On April 24th, 1975, museum staff and volunteers moved into the building, and the next day, notice of completion of the museum was formally filed with Sutter County. As you may know, the museum and the property that surrounds it was donated by Howard and Norma Harder to the county. So we will be honoring that event by celebrating 50 years of service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for the email you sent the board as well. Next speaker.
The next comment was received by email from Tony Curlin. His comments are as follows. The Sutter County Museum Association has concerns about the budget taking effect on July 1st, 2024. We are short one staff position, leaving only one full-time person on board. We most likely will have to cut hours for the public to 4 days per week, but we'll continue to keep traveling exhibits on track. We will most likely not be able to respond to requests for or from the public, nor accept many donations from the public for our archives/storage. We will do our best to continue to serve with our volunteers, but would likely not be able to answer many questions from the public. Projects will be limited by available time and personnel. That concludes the public comment.
Thank you. No other member of the public wishes to speak? Seeing none. Board?
Yes, through the chair, I just have a question. First of all, thank you for your presentation today. I want to also specifically thank Phyllis for your comments today. I appreciate that. We plan to be at the 50th anniversary, and we plan that the museum will have a 100th anniversary one day. So we won't be there, but we'll be happy that it does. I just have a question. I'm not sure which staff member, Mr. CAO, who would this be for, but I know that we have a contract grant service that we've hired with through the county. I think grants are really essential to the support of the museum and the library all the way through. And I just want to know at what level of engagement do we have with this contract service, and are there plans to actively pursue grants for both of those entities?
Yeah, a good question. We do have California Consulting on board, and I've worked with them personally with former Fire Chief Shalowitz on the SAFER grant, and a variety of departments have worked with California Consulting. Before we even had them on board, the museum was successful in bringing in that nearly $400,000 grant for the local water exhibits, I should say, in history. But general grants are rare that will just cover operating costs. They usually want to see an additional program. It can still be beneficial in that you may have departments that are partially grant funded and partially, say, general fund funded, and you might be able to move staff from the general fund programs into the grant funded programs temporarily and back. So we'll continue pursuing opportunities. We've had some preliminary discussions with Yuba County and about looking at the water agency and seeing if they would want to have anything to do with those the displays on water and the history of water, and we'll keep pursuing that. The staff here today, I don't think, would be able to comment on that, so I'm not calling them out at all. So we have some Yuba County staff here. But so we're going to continue going down that road, yes, looking into grants.
Okay, great. Thanks for those comments. Other than that, I have no other comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Nick?
Yeah, Taylor or Lisa, I just had a quick question on the Ag Commissioner's part of the budget here. I noticed that intergovernmental revenues are down about $150,000 from last year. I'm just curious, what does that typically consist of?
To the chair, off the top of my head, not that you want that kind of answer, I would believe it would be gas tax refund that we probably would receive less of because we have to match a certain amount of expenses. So if our agricultural commissioner, looks like she'll comment.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I should have asked this question in our initial meetings, but.
Thank you, Supervisor, for the question. So probably a reduction in revenue, gas and mill tax, also state contracts would be reduced. Also, we're seeing a significant decrease in seed production in Sutter County, specifically sunflower seed. So we anticipate a loss of revenue there as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for your comments. Any other questions for the staff or the presentation? Seeing none, take a motion.
Move for approval of the recommended action.
Second. A motion and a second by Flores and Baines. Roll call, please.
Supervisor McKelly?
Aye.
Supervisor Flores?
Aye.
Supervisor Baines?
Aye.
Supervisor Conant?
Aye. Okay, moving on to Section B, Development Services.
Thank you, Board. So development services, we just have one slide here, and this includes actually five different budget units within development services. As I said, we rolled up to basically the department level to give you the overall picture of what's happening. So the budget units included in this slide are engineering services, water resources, development services administration, planning and building, and environmental health. So the 5-year net county growth here has been $360,000. That's 26.1 or 5.2% annual average. The reductions we made from the county department's requested budget to the recommended budget was nearly $300,000, which is a 14% decrease in the appropriation that we had for this department. So that is going to be achieved primarily by staffing reductions and reallocating staff between general funded positions and moving them over to funded positions that are paid for by other revenue sources. I just wanted to call attention to, there's a pretty big dip there in fiscal year 21-22 that you'll notice on the chart. And that is primarily related to the planning and building division lowering their services and supplies and getting a pretty significant state grant there that covered a lot of our general fund costs. So that's kind of what you're seeing in a lot of these slides is this is not the total spending of the department, it's just how much it's affecting our net county cost. So because we had this 1 year where we got a big state grant, it lowers our net county costs while we continue to provide similar levels of service. And that is the end of that section, so I will hand it back to the chair.
Okay. Public comments?
We have none for this section.
No public comment cards? Any members of the public wish to address the board before we move on? Board discussion. Dan?
I have no comments. I appreciate the presentation, and the budget looks good to me at this point, so thank you.
Nick, Torm, nothing? Okay. You want to take a motion then?
Move to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Baines and Flores? Motion is, roll call, please.
Supervisor McKelly?
Aye.
Supervisor Flores?
Aye.
Supervisor Baines?
Aye.
Supervisor Conant?
Aye. Okay, moving on, section C, discussion and consent general government.
All right, I am back here to kick us off with section C, which is our general government. We're starting off with the assessor. So the growth for this department has been 12.6% over the last 5 years, and that's 2.5% annual average, which, as you know, by the raises we've given to staff, and this is a staff-heavy department, this is lower than the increase in cost of staff. So this department really has been living within its means for a long time, and it is, at this point, pretty much as pinched as it can be to continue offering the services that it needs from the county. Any further reductions will essentially require them to abandon some of their core functionality. So this is really the lowest we can possibly do. The assessor's office is a general fund department, but it does bring in, of course, a lot of money. And any dollar we spend, for example, on reassessing values, understanding if people are paying the correct tax rate, that brings in more revenue for the county. So we don't want to go any lower on this. For the auditor controller's office, the recommended appropriations here are just over $2 million, and that is a nearly $500,000 decrease from requested to recommended. That's over 17% reduction. The reductions were achieved by increasing the assumed vacancy factor, basically open positions, and reducing travel and conferences for state and national meetings. So we had a lot of travel reductions through various departments to, in some ways, close our gap. Of course, in departments like the Auditor Controller's Office, which are very, professional level, understanding the constant change of requirements statewide and nationally, this does have an impact, but this is really the best we could do to achieve the savings we needed. Now I will hand it off.
Appropriations for the Board of Supervisors are at $625,320. The net county growth or net county cost growth is $9,900 over 5 years, which is a 0.3% annual average. The reductions that we took from requested to recommended totaled $36,577. And how I got there is we didn't fund the board aide position in requested. And so that's not really reflected because that cut was already taken in requested. And then we ended up reducing the 0.1% for the principal analyst that was used for legislative analyst tasks. And so we took that out of this budget unit as well as a 50% reduction for travel and conferences for state and national meetings. The next slide is the county administrator slide. Total appropriations are recommended at $1.4 million, a little bit more, almost 1.5. The 5-year net county cost is $240,335, or about a 3.9% average over 5 years. The recommended reductions between requested and recommended were staffing reductions, primarily due to retirements in the department that are not going to be backfilled in this fiscal year, as well as reduction in travel for conferences and training.
Emergency Services Budget Unit 2401's total appropriations are recommended at $399,295. The 5-year net county cost growth is a negative $175,271. That's roughly a negative 30.5% growth rate with about a negative 6.1 annual average. The net county cost reduction is recommended at $85,063, a 17.6% for areas in professional and specialized services, travel expenses, and other services and supplies. Historically, this department sees an increase in revenue after a fire disaster year related to opportunities to secure more grants. As reflected in the graph, the line dips for the years there is less revenue to help reduce the net county costs. Fire Administration's Budget Unit 2402's total appropriations are recommended at $370,210. The 5-year net county cost growth is $96,847, roughly a 35% growth rate with about a 7% annual average. There is no net county cost reductions recommended for this department. This is a very slim department to begin with, but they consistently come in at or under net county costs in the past. County Service Area F's Budget Unit 0305's total appropriations are recommended at $2,099,618. The 5-year net county cost growth is $2,019,802, roughly a 2,500% growth rate. That's about a 500% annual average. County Service Area F was never intended to be a financial responsibility of the county general fund, and in fact, there are state laws that restricts the transfer of county funds, general fund dollars specifically, to special districts, whether they are independent or dependent. With that said, these net county cost amounts on the graph are discretionary revenue contributions by your board. Initially, the discretionary revenue contributions were for one-time costs. However, as the current tax revenue falls short of meeting the escalating operational costs, contributions have extended into the coverage of operational costs as well. So there are no net county costs recommended, but the department must continue to unfund 2 fire engineer positions, and they've also applied for the FEMA Safer Grant for assistance with staffing, as the committed remainder of the ARPA funds are scheduled to be depleted by the end of fiscal year 24-25. The dip in the chart is due to fiscal year 2023-24 actuals, estimated to come in lower than anticipated, and it's due to your board's support to provide one-time funds of up to $1,325,000 from ARPA funds to stabilize the staffing and services through June 30th, 2024.
So for this slide, we have rolled up the clerk recorder elections and the clerk of a board budget units because these all report to the same person, the same department level. As the board and public are probably well aware, we have the elections division is here by the Civic Center area on Veterans Memorial Circle, but the recorder's office and the clerk's office are downtown Yuba City, so on 2nd Street. So there's been a long-standing need for the clerk, recorder elections, clerk of the board offices to renovate the building that the recorder currently works out of and or to consolidate their services to increase staff efficiencies. And so that is just an intro, which is to say that if you look at this chart, you generally see when you roll up all these budget units, the election costs in election years are going to spike. So you go up a year, down a year, up a year, down a year. We would expect that this year, given that it's a presidential general election, that the cost would be higher, but they actually are relatively flat from the previous year, and that is because of the reductions that this department was able to make for their net county cost was by moving $100,000 of their restricted fund balance to cover some of the costs that otherwise would have been paid for by the general fund, and also to reduce some staffing and reduce some software needs. So there will be an impact to this department as it tries to make sure that it can pull out the election and perform its other obligations to the county. Overall, the 5-year growth for these departments together is 83%, which is a 16% annual average. And a lot of that reflects the cost of doing business for these various departments.
Appropriations for county council are recommended at $1,193,208. The 5-year net county growth is $55,587, which is about a 4.9% increase or a 1.0 annual average over the 5 years. This department did come in at pretty close to net county costs. They did have a couple of challenges with the current or the previous county council leaving and hiring the new county council, but they did go and find some reductions in other pay and travel and training and professional and specialized services for a total of $27,746. This is a very small department, and they are at their core competency. So any reduction would be a result of a reduction in services.
For human resources, we have a 11% annual average growth year over year over the past 5 years. The appropriations that were requested by the department were just about $1.7 million, and we had to reduce that by $140,000 to get it to about $1.55 million for this year. As it should be clear, human resources is a very human resource intensive department. We have staff, and really the only way we can save money here is by reducing staff. So that is what we've done to get these costs down for this year. We've held some positions open, and we've reduced some information technology services due to the transition to Workday. So there's some legacy costs that we were able to save on, but overall it really was a staffing savings that we were able to achieve this net county costs reduction. For animal control, this is a joint powers authority that we have with Yuba City, Live Oak, and Sutter County. And we have very little control over the costs here. We're essentially paying the county share according to the JPA. So we were not able to make any reductions from recommended to, or from requested to recommended. For the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office, the total recommended appropriations here